Hello, I'm Emily Clare, and this is Food Fight, an ongoing series where I talk about industrial agriculture and food justice. Today's episode, #NoPlant19. This is my third year living in Iowa, and the thing about living in the American Midwest is it's all weather all the time. This past winter, my university was closed for 2 days because of near record wind chills. A kid at the University of Iowa froze to death. I've got friends as far away as Ohio and Oklahoma who've had to shelter from tornadoes these past couple weeks. Eastern Iowa's been flooded, Western Iowa's been flooded. These are memorable images when you see somebody canoeing through their flooded hometown. But what's going on in the Midwest right now is bigger than that. Because it's too wet to plant corn. For weeks, it has been too wet to plant corn. Corn has a pretty long growing season. You need somewhere around 100 frost-free days. There are quicker growing varieties, but they're lower yield, so they're not as profitable. It depends a little on how far north or south you are, but really, corn should be in the ground by the first 2 weeks of May. And as of right now, only 58% of the nation's corn acreage has actually been planted. That doesn't mean we're going to have 40 million unplanted acres just sitting fallow, but if farmers want to plant corn, they're going to have to switch to a hybrid with a shorter growing season. The more industrialized farming has gotten, the more farming has become dominated by just a small handful of seed companies, the less flexible and the less genetically diverse crops have become. There used to be 300 different races of maize in the Americas, but just one race of dent corn makes up over 99% of the corn that's planted in the US. And there's literally not enough short growing season seed corn in the country to make up for all the acres that are going unplanted. And again, shorter growing season, lower yield. The USDA predicted a yield of 14.96 billion bushels of corn for this year, but now AccuWeather predicts only 13.6 billion. That is a lot of missing corn. No corn on the cob for your summer barbecue, no popcorn at the movies. Yeah, no. Corn is in your bottle of soda. It's in your gas tank. When you pour bourbon on your cornflakes in the morning, it's in the bourbon and the cornflakes. When you eat meat, eggs, ice cream, butter, cheese, or yogurt, it comes from animals that have been fed on corn. Obviously, there are huge implications for the amazing fact that so much of our food supply and fuel supply depend on just one genetically frighteningly homogeneous crop. But that's another episode. What I want to ask right now is what's behind this record-breaking wet spring that resulted in NoPlant19? And the answer, of course, is climate change. Because the weather is a system with a huge amount of natural variation, it's really hard to point to a specific event and say it's because of climate change. It's normal for spring to be wet. If this spring was a little wetter than normal, or a lot wetter, or the wettest spring on record for the Midwest, how much of that can we attribute to climate change, and how much is down to random chance? I don't pretend I can answer that question, but we can look at some of the factors leading up to this particularly wet spring. First of all, since the fall of 2018, the Midwest has been having much more precipitation than normal, and that made the soil really wet, really saturated. There's been an increase in precipitation, particularly in the winter and spring, across the whole breadbasket area of the US, from wheat-producing states like North Dakota and Kansas to corn-producing states like Iowa and Illinois. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture, so global warming is directly contributing to this increase in precipitation. And it's also responsible for shifting large scale weather patterns that affect where rain falls. So the southwest is getting drier. And by the way, if you want something else to worry about, the two fastest growing US states are Utah and Arizona, at the same time as the Midwest is getting wetter. So, all of that water has been sitting in the soil frozen. All of that water has been sitting on top of the fields as snow. And when it kept on snowing and kept on raining into spring, the water had nowhere else to go except into our streets and into our cornfields. Climate change is going to have disastrous effects on agriculture and on our food supply, and I think we're going to be seeing a preview of that over the next year. You'd think that that would make farmers allies in the fight against climate change, but unfortunately, no, or at least not so far, because 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions come from the global food system, whether that's the methane that the cows produce, greenhouse gases that are produced by fertilizer manufacturing, or even just the trucks and planes that bring us peaches and strawberries in the middle of winter. But farming is going to have to change if it's going to survive. Farming is going to have to change if we are going to survive. This isn't like telling people in Florida to sell their houses to Aquaman before the sea levels rise. This is all of us. And my greatest hope right now, as this grim season begins, is that the farmers whose lives and livelihoods are affected most directly by No Plant 19 come to see that they have a stake in working against climate change. And you know what? Iowa has corn farms as far as the eye can see, but we have wind farms too. Thanks for watching. Please give me a like and a subscribe if you feel so moved. I'm currently unemployed and recording on a shoestring budget, so if you'd tip me a buck on Ko-Fi, I would put it towards raising my production values, something I'm very eager to do. Thanks, I'll see you next time.